What happens when two dudes, one a retired Navy SEAL commander in Colorado Springs, and the other a hippie meditation teacher in New York City, get together to discuss living mindfully? That's a great question, because we don't know what will happen either. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with co-hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Each week, we take an authentic dive into how mindfulness continually impacts our lives, deepens our relationships, and allows us to be emotionally alive. We filter all of our conversations through the man box, where we unpack how as men we are expected to act in society, how fighting the authentic human experience is exhausting and damaging, and how mindfulness can help. Now, on to the show.
Woohoo! Men Talking Mindfulness. Look, we're both in the same shirt. Finally, both wearing the Men Talking Mindfulness shirt. Here we are, Men Talking Mindfulness. Jon McCaskill here in Colorado Springs with my brother from another mother in New York City, Will Schneider. Today, we're going to be talking about trust, and I've got your back. It's going to be a great show. We've got a special guest on who I'll introduce here in a second. The show itself has lots going on. Yesterday, we did an episode on military transition. We did that in the Spotify Green Room. That's an experiment, having a lot of fun with it. We know that the audio is not great on the Spotify Green Room, but hey, that's part of our brand, raw, uncut, and unapologetic, right? Well,
agreed, man. It's part of the journey.
It's part of it. Having fun with it, though. Great episode. Lots of great content there from other people besides me and Will. Lots of great information on military transition. So if you are military, if you're a veteran, or if you know someone who is a military or veteran and they're thinking about transitioning or they recently transitioned, give that show a listen. Lots of great tips, advice about what you can experience, what you can do to grow, etc. And then over the next 2 weeks, we've got a ton of exciting shows that will be both airing live and via podcast. So make sure you stay up to date. We're going to be bringing James Nestor, the New York Times bestseller, talking about his book, Breath. It's a fascinating read. If you haven't read it, give it a read. It's just mind-blowing. Check that out. We're going to be talking about sleep. We're going to be talking about cold weather immersion, cold water immersion, and just all sorts of different things. So lots of great stuff coming up on the show. But again, today I've got your back, and specifically, we got a special guest, a friend of mine, Neil Markey. Neil is a former Army Ranger. He did one trip to Iraq and 2 to Afghanistan. I love that he says one trip as though it was a vacation. He's also got his MBA and MIA from Columbia, an entrepreneur. He worked for McKinsey as a consultant, private equity C-level executive. He's a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. And he's also the founder of Evolutio. And Evolutio is an organization that is introducing people to mindfulness meditation and also psychedelic therapy. So that said, let's bring Mike, what am I talking about? Neil. Where did I get Mike from? Neil, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Neil.
Hello.
What's been going on, man? How are you?
Well, I'm in New York City for a week, and
Boom.
yeah. And then I'm going to Spain on tomorrow for 10 days to sit down with some of the partners in this little adventure we're on, and then back to running these psychedelic retreats.
Fantastic. Definitely want to hear more about that here in a second. But as we were covering before the show, what we like to do before, or not before, but at the beginning of every show and at the end of every show is get a grounding practice going. And as I kind of let you in on a secret there, Neil, it's mostly to ground me and Will before the show, so we can actually have an effective show. So, man, we'd be honored if you would lead one, brother.
Yeah, let's do it. So everybody can kind of just get comfortable on their chair. And if you'd like to, you can close your eyes and just take a moment to just realize that you're breathing. And let's just, in our heads, count 1 with the inhale, 2 with the exhale, and let's just go up to 10. Once you've gotten to 10, we'll just do a quick body scan. So nothing about meditation says it needs to be slow. Let's take our awareness to the sensation of our feet on the ground, out to the tip of the toes, both sides. Moving into the heels of your feet, just feeling the sensation. Ankles, calves, knees, the big part of your legs, the quads and the hamstrings. Where you're seated on the chair, the sensation. Moving into your belly. Maybe you feel the breath a bit. Into the chest. Out to the fingertips. And the palms. Forearms. Upper arms. Shoulders. Moving up to your head. See if you can feel your lips. And your nose. And your eyes. And just to close, we'll just take a moment to feel our entire body as a whole. And everybody can come back. Open the eyes. Well, we should be here more now. So.
Wow. Thank you, Neil.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking towards the end, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm present. So thank you for that grounding practice. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man, and especially putting you on the spot like that. That was just a test to see if you could actually live up to the intro with the mindfulness-based stress reduction. I was like, all right, here we go. We're going to put him on the spot.
You passed the test, Neil. I'm sorry we had to do that to you, but
We'll keep you on the show. We'll keep you on the show.
I don't get much adventure in my life anymore, so it's nice to have things like this.
Oh yeah, I'm going to Spain. I don't have any adventure.
Oh man, so. Yeah, again, the show today is I've Got Your Back and talking about trust. Will, you want to kick us off, man?
Yeah,
or do you want to go first?
With this, what I would like the three of us to analyze and really kind of look at is like how to, develop trust. What it means to get, to lend yourself to somebody, also to receive. Like I got your back, and that give and take relationship. I think it's important. We talk about letting go of control. Like letting our ego kind of step aside. Because I know there's a lot, we have, I imagine three of us are kind of those alpha guys that are always willing to like, boom, take charge and lead. What does it mean to follow, and what's the dynamic there? Best practices to give support, also receive support. The confidence that, that getting somebody's back and giving your back to somebody and your energy to somebody and, and how to receive support. Again, I said the confidence that it provides. I think I said a couple of those twice. We could talk about our stories as well. I think would be really great. And also not just where we succeeded, but maybe where we could have done better and blundered a little bit. And we'll see whatever else comes up on this show. But, a lot of things come up. There's trust that's involved, which is a big one. I as I'm researching this topic, altruism comes through, which is the belief in or the practice of disinterested and selfless concern of the well-being of others. Right? Trust definition is firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone, or something. Those are the things that are coming up for me. And John or Neil, where do you think we should start with this topic?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. I like where you talked about not where we failed, but where we may have fallen short.
Yeah.
both in receiving trust and in giving trust, both in providing support for someone's back and maybe having someone fail in giving us that support. Yeah, I'd like to start with that. Let's start with that and then talk about potentially how you got it back or how that other person who let you down got it back.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll also throw in, guys are both, high level military people. Like, what do they do in the military? I think I'm interested. I'm not non-military. And I know there's a lot of other non-military people out there. Like, what do they do in the service in order to create that bond? So,
yeah. Well, I'll jump in, and you guys feel free to add or interrupt me or tell me to shut up. we'll go in. So I'll start with that last question, then I can get into some failures. I think in the special operations community, at least within naval special warfare, and I'm sure very similar within the Ranger community, you are put through a crucible of some sort, some type of rite of passage. So some extreme training for SEALs, you go through basic underwater demolition SEAL training out in Coronado, which just kind of gained some infamy after being on the Discovery Channel and everything else. And you only get a certain number of people through. You don't get a whole lot. And that's one of the first special operations forces truths, is that you can't mass produce special operations forces because they are so because they're special, right? And that in and of itself lends a level of trust. When you get to a team, when you get to a platoon, you know that the other guys have been through that training. They've gone through that. So in a weird way, going through a physically grueling crucible of some sort lends a level of trust. Now that said, I have been let down by my fellow special operators, and I have personally let down or at least I have a feeling that I've let down some of my brothers in the special operations community. And that's honestly what got me to the point where I was needing meditation and mindfulness in my life, because I felt this sense of guilt for letting them down, both for, not being on the battlefield when we lost some of my brothers. And then as we talked about yesterday in the last episode last week about military transition, almost like a feeling of betrayal in leaving. Which is not true, but it's just a feeling. So those are some places that I think special operations helps to develop trust, and also where I personally feel like I may have fallen short.
Well, what was getting in the way, Jon? You know what I mean? Like, if you look back and reflect, like, what was getting in the way of that relationship and that bond and that, that trust that we're trying to talk about here?
I think some of that negative self-talk, right? We all carry those false narratives with us. And so there was a lot of kind of an imposter syndrome that I don't feel good enough to be amongst these superheroes. And then two, as I looked to leave the military, I felt as though I was almost betraying them. Again, that's a false narrative, but that's what I was that's the story I was telling myself in my head. And that got in the way a lot of what I felt to be trust. There were other times too, when, for one reason or another, we let one another down. Nothing's popping in my head. I'm sure through the show something will, but there was definitely things that got in the way. What about you, Neil? Anything from your side?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that, like, in the special operations community, the trust is built because you solve and you like work through really tough missions and problems together. And it's that, when things are hard, people show their true colors, and then you're able to kind of get to another level of intimacy, although we don't call it intimacy. But when you really go through tough things together, then that creates these like really, really strong bonds. It's just kind of like, as an individual, you have challenges in your own life, and that can be really opportunities for growth. So I actually think about this kind of consciously now when I'm building teams, and it's like, you need to trust is like probably the foundational component of a high functioning team. So how do you build trust? Well, you get them to work through really tough things together, and you get them to really have challenge, and that kind of like, that creates that bond.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like, there's something about stress, and in the human form, in any form, like, stress strengthens.
Yep.
Typically, you know what I mean? If you're willing to, if you're willing to endure it, and be with it. But yeah.
Yeah.
I have actually, Neil, I doing some homework here and, looking at how to build teams, right. And how to really build trust within teams. And I think these, I don't know, it's like 9 pillars here. It says how to build trust at work. Right. And it's like, tell the truth, admit when you don't know something, admit when you're wrong. If you say you'll do it, then do it. If you're meant to do it, then do it. Explain your process, your thought process, extend trust to others, like include others. So
yeah, we use this at McKinsey a lot. And when I first saw it, I got to admit, I was kind of like, oh, another framework about how to deal with people. Like it's just kind of like BS, But actually, there is a trust equation. If you Google trust equation, it's like pretty well known, but it's basically trustworthiness equals credibility plus reliability plus intimacy over self-awareness or self-orientation. And I think when I think through that, it actually makes sense. It's like credibility is like you have the right skills, you're not like, you're not an imposter. You're not like kind of full of BS. And then the reliability one, I think that's where I've failed before. It's like I will come into things with like a lot of energy, but then kind of like be a bit inconsistent. And then people can't rely on you. And the reliability, like the consistency is huge to really build trust. And then the last one on the top is the intimacy and this like emotional intelligence. And I think this is also where I've like failed miserably, particularly in the military, where you just didn't get a lot of points for being, a warm-hearted, connected person.
Yeah, kind, right?
Kind, right? But like we we're very energetic beings. We're picking up on each other's emotion in a real way, not just like through the thinking mind. So this ability to be empathetic and connect in a real way where it doesn't feel like you're just like mechanical to the other human being. Like that's really important. But we've got really bad habits collectively, and just kind of, going the rat race.
Yeah. Will and I talk a lot about authenticity, right? And how valuable that is. And if you are, reading that trust equation, which I'm going to have you say again here in a second.
Maybe Lindsay can Google and put it up here. It'd be great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That'd be awesome. So you put that in the chat. So that the trust equation, even if you're looking at that, and you're like, okay, I've got all the parts of the trust equation and I'm going to work to do that. But if you do it robotically and not authentically, it's not going to come across, and people are going to see through that.
And that's exactly that. That's that self-orientation. That's the variable that's on the bottom. So if like you're not aware of yourself, if you're not like living your truth, right? I guess you could say, then people smell that from a mile away, and it really doesn't matter what you do on the top, because it's just, that you lose everybody, right? So it's that, and that's why I'm, and I know you guys know this, but that's why I'm such a big proponent of meditation, because that's like the path, that's how you develop this stuff. You can get better at it.
Yeah. Well, a big part, of the team is again, John, we come back to authenticity, but also vulnerability. Being willing to be seen, right? And being willing to be seen is part of that comes with the asking for help or saying you don't know, which I was just talking about, like admitting that you're wrong, which is a big, piece of vulnerability. And right there, like what I've seen when I admit that I'm wrong or I've fallen short of a particular goal, or when I'm asking for help, it's like, it's amazing the space that's created amongst the people, maybe just one-on-one with somebody else or a group of people, and the whole dynamic kind of shifts. And also, right, I guess that's kind of that tuning fork thing again, John, like everyone else begins to be like, wait, okay, I'm a human being too, and I have my own flaws, and I always don't know the answer. And it's like, and to see somebody admit that really just creates more of that bonding within the group.
Yeah,
so much so.
I agree. And
definitely.
But you can, there's a middle path to this too. There's a balance, there's a tuning, which I found with myself, which is when I was a captain in the Rangers, I was dick, like I told people what to do and they did it because I was a captain, and I didn't have, there wasn't any of this vulnerability or like, how's everybody thinking about this stuff? It was like, you're going to do what I say because I'm the boss. And then when I got into the corporate world, that wasn't going to work. Right. So I had to like swing it back the other way. But there was actually this period in my career where I think I swung it too far. I was kind of like, here's my heart, here's my, here's all my things. But you can, there's a balance to be had there, because you, as a leader, you do need to have that credibility, right? So there's a middle path. It's like, you can kind of overshare, and you can be too much, when people are really, a lot of times are looking for somebody that it has the balance, right? Like it, makes the tough decisions, but like in a heart-centered way, and like, we'll move things forward. So it's a tuning exercise. It's not one way or the other.
I like that you hit that, man, because and especially in high performing teams, and obviously our point of reference, or at least mine for the last 24 years, was special operations. If you do go too far, it almost is perceived as weakness. And the last thing we want as a leader is to be perceived as weak, because as soon as you're perceived as weak, you become highly ineffective. And then not only are you ineffective, but then your team becomes ineffective, or it becomes a toxic environment where they start actually almost undermining you, undermining your authority, undermining what it is you're doing. Yeah. And this comes back, Will, to our beginner's mindset episode, where we don't want leaders who think they know it all. We want people who are willing to ask questions, admit when they don't know, admit when they've screwed up. But we also don't want people who are weak and spineless. So we want somewhere in the middle there. So I'm glad that you hit that, Neil.
Yeah, same. Like that middle thing you mentioned, Neil, is great. Like, I mean, what do we, because there's certain, I guess the quality of good, not just leadership, but good teamwork, and being bonded with your team, in the sense of like, being seen, but also being firm. It's like, there's that, and I can only imagine, like, being a cap. We got, I have a captain and a commander here today, right? and there's a necessary, like, I mean, I think you got to be a dick sometimes, but sometimes that's just good leadership, right? But also, like, go ahead, Neil.
Well, I was just there. I love riding horses, and I've gotten to meet a lot of horse trainers over the years, and the horse trainers that are like, they can speak to the horse like energetically. It's like, it's fascinating, right? They have a way of connecting. And one of the guys that I got to know in Mexico actually pretty well said, it's just like leading people. He's like, you need to have this balance of like, they need to have a sense that they trust you, and they know that you're in charge, like they respect your authority, but that they also feel that you love them, right? And so it's this balance of like, you care so deeply about them, but you're also gonna you're gonna have the law down, like there's standards.
You're gonna kick them in the ass, right?
but in a loving way, right? You can in a really loving way, right?
Yep. I've got horses out here in Colorado, Neil. So if you love horses, come on out sometime, man.
I love that.
But the same with dogs. Like if you don't even have horses, dogs, they will do anything for you. And you can discipline them, but if you're disciplining them in a harsh way, they're gonna start they'll still do anything for you, but they're gonna lose that trust in you and maybe start shying away from you. So maybe every good leader needs a dog, kind of as a litmus test to see where they are.
Every human needs a dog, right?
Every human needs a dog. That's right.
Well, nicely, Ed here says, trust and performance builds integrity.
Yeah,
which I think is great. So it's not even being, just like, hey, don't trust me for no reason at all. But if you're showing up and performing at your best, right, that's going to raise the level of everybody else, right? And that develops that kind of credibility and that integrity, like we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. So, or Will, rather, I know you wanted to go into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I just have again researching for the show, and Abraham's Maslow's famous hierarchy of human needs lists love, belonging, and social interaction as fundamental to the psychological well-being of a person. Right? Think about that, right? The love, belonging, and social interaction, right? It's fundamental to the psychology of well-being of a person. We also now know that being socially connected leads to increased lifespan and stronger immune systems, right? So again, this is like, we're also biologically wired, right? We thrive when we are connected, right? I mean, and when we do connect in a meaningful way, in a loving way, but also, have that firmness sometimes too, we activate those hormones in our body. Oxytocin and dopamine are two really big ones, right? Dopamine is that pleasure molecule, but also there's also a need to kind of have that kind of connection, right? But then we do have that connection, right? Oxytocin, that love molecule, like you mentioned, Jon, giving that love begins to open us up even more. So we have we have our own biology that comes into play when we begin to develop this trust. We begin to have this I got your back feeling about us. So I mean, it's not just these aren't just theories or ideas. I mean, this is how we thrive as human beings, which is really important. And yeah.
There's a physiology behind it, right? Like
Absolutely.
Truly, like not only do we feel better mentally, but we physically are getting what we need to feel better physically. All those hormones are getting kicked in, and then that is going to make us feel better. That's going to make us perform better. And then again, that comes full circle to having trust in those teams to develop them from just an average Joe team to the high performing team. What about the reverse? What happens in teams where that's not offered, or what happens physically, even at the individual level, when we don't get that? I'd love to talk about that.
Well, I mean, what comes up for me is like, imagine there is there's some sort of depression or something like that, or just feeling like defeated or not belonging, which is again, it goes against what I just talked about with Maslow. And I'd imagine there's going to be some undermining, and there's going to, so they're going to be like a kind of maybe a coup within the organization or something like that, or within the team, to kind of be like, kick that kind of leader out, which is naturally going to happen in some ways. Those are things that come up for me.
What about you, Neil? Have you seen this? And I don't want to have you call out any particular organization or any particular unit, but have you seen this where there was no trust and what that did to a team or the individuals?
Yeah. Well, where I saw this a lot was in when I was doing these like private equity restructurings. We were going in and buying companies that were in bankruptcy. So you'd have this whole senior leadership team, like times got tough, right? The organization's in crisis, and people just get individualistic, and they get defensive, right? They go into fight or flight mode, and it's me, and they lose sight of like, we need to kind of work through this together. So yeah, I've seen it, and I mean, how do you get it back? When it's gotten that bad, I think it's really tough to get it back. I don't know if I've actually ever seen. There's a handful of scenarios that I'm thinking of, and they didn't get it back. Like the companies, they had to kind of bring a whole new leadership team in. But I think if you're a self-aware leader, you need to be able to identify those things a bit earlier before they get to full crisis, and this container that you're creating for these people to feel comfortable and be able to exchange ideas. That's probably one of the most important things of the leader, is to be mindful of what that environment, what that container feels like, and people's perceptions of it are. And if it starts to go down, and how do you know if it's going down? You ask. You literally ask people, hey, do you, it can be one-on-one, it can be in a group, but you say, like, do you feel like you can be vulnerable here? Do you feel like if you make a mistake, you're going to be supported? Do you feel right? And like ask people, and the same way people, it's like if people ask me, like, how do you get people to know that you care? Well, you tell them.
Right.
Tell them. You sit them down and you authentically tell them and have those connections. That it's all this like water cooler talk, right? This stuff that's not just like the mechanical things of business that we've really lost, because it's just, we're jam packed. We just go from like thing to thing to thing, and it's just like work. But there's this whole other connection between human beings that's really, really important for us to like work together, that like good leaders need to think about. That is, to me, it informs the work, but it's very separate from like the day-to-day task. It's this environment that we're creating that we often lose sight of.
Yeah, something that you mentioned there, Neil, was when things start to go south in an organization, whether it's military or whether it's corporate, whatever, maybe it's even a sports team. When things start to go south, each individual starts thinking about me, and it becomes that scarcity mindset, right? So we talked about on a previous episode the abundance versus the scarcity mindset, and that scarcity mindset is one of fear. That one of fear of loss at the individual level. And I think that's where people, if they can switch their mindset and say, okay, even though we're going downhill here, we may be losing the organization, what is best for everyone instead of what's best for me, then maybe that's an opportunity, one, to get the trust back, but also to get the team back on track. So it's just that mindset. And if you can start to live that mindset in everything that you do, that abundance mindset in everything that you do, from your friends, family, to your work and professional life, I think that's another place that you may be able to change that level of trust and maybe even get it back if you're lucky.
Yeah, I mean, getting away from the whole, I mean, we talked yesterday, I mentioned this in the green room, like the objective experience versus subjective, right? Instead of just like, leaders that, or bosses, really, we should call them, right? Bosses versus leaders. Like they're just looking at the numbers, the bottom line, and, and people as cogs in their machine. And I say their machine very specifically because they just think they run the whole thing and they built the whole thing and trying to take all the credit of the thing, versus like seeing people as human beings. That's so incredibly important. And as someone's mentioned here about, as a leader, emotional intelligence is essential today. It's and it really is. And that's, again, why with the show and mindfulness and meditation, it's going to help you get in touch with those feelings. And I think, and I think this comes into the man box a little bit with toxic masculinity. And when you begin to understand your own feelings, you'll be more available to experience the feelings of others, and therefore maybe lend yourself into helping others and to asking for help or saying you're wrong and being vulnerable and authentic. And it's also, but how do we practice these things? Like, you know what I mean? How do we, we're talking about all these wonderful things, but yeah.
I'll be right back.
I'll go. Yeah.
All right.
So, but like, what are the things, John, that help to us to practice getting away from that toxicity or getting away from that, boss kind of mindset, and like bringing yourself into your own humanity. So therefore you can be with humanity of somebody else.
Yeah. I think you hit it on the head, man, is the objectification of the people in your organization, whether it's the people that work for you, your colleagues that work with you, or the whole organization. I mean, you've got to understand the human aspect of it and understand that all those humans have something going on in their lives. Yeah. You have to be compassionate. I know we come full circle always. We should just call this Men Talking Compassion, because it comes up in our episode every time. Compassion, right. Compassion. So I think we'll start calling this Men Talking Compassion. But if you are able to show that and understand that each person in that organization is a human being, each human being has something going on in their lives that may be challenging them, may be an obstacle or a piece of adversity for them, then I think that we're able to develop that trust. So a TV series that my wife and I watch every year is, I think it's 10 or 11 episodes. It's Band of Brothers.
Oh my God.
Basically,
yeah. I bought that on CD back in the day. Like I love Band of Brothers. Unbelievable.
So good. Literally, I think every leader should be required to watch that, whether you're a military leader or a corporate leader, because in every episode there's like 2 or 3 leadership lessons to be learned.
Yeah.
And one of them is trust. I mean, there's several times that in the series the trust is violated, and specifically as the one leader, I'm forgetting his name right now, but the initial leader of Easy Company, he treats his people like machines and as a means to an end for his promotion, and his people lose trust in him instantly.
Yeah,
and that becomes a toxic environment. And as soon as that guy is removed, and Neil talked about this before, replacing some leadership where the trust had been lost. As soon as he was replaced by Captain Winters or Lieutenant Winters at the time, the organization and the company just takes off, and it's just unstoppable.
Yeah.
So anyway,
well, they were able to really achieve, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this as well. When you have one toxic member, like it's one bad apple. What did I say? Right? It's going to contaminate the rest. But when you really work cohesively, and what I enjoyed, like I actually gave my copy of Stealing Fire to somebody, but I remember like hearing and reading in the book, that hive mentality that happens, in the SEAL teams, and I'm sure like in the regional organizations as well, because like you're all clicking on all cylinders, and without that I got your back and that trust and all the things you've gone through to get to that point, it's impossible, right, to function as one unit. One thing I'll also say that you brought up earlier, Jon, is, when I went through my first yoga training, we did this exercise, and the teacher that was, facilitating this particular group was saying, you don't know where when people walk into the yoga studio, you don't know where they're at. You don't know what kind of day they had, come back to the, humanizing people, you don't know if somebody passed away or, they got yelled at work or, something happened on the subway or something like that. So instead of like, judging someone when you see them just on their appearance or the energy that they're kind of carrying or whatever emotional state they're in, just being neutral, and just being open and being kind and being friendly. And that right there, just creating that space for somebody to be where they are and how they are, also begins to create more of that, some of those bonds of trust. So I wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil, you got anything, brother?
Yeah. You just can't overstate how important it's like it's foundational to our relationships. It's like the thing you need to be able to trust. So you gotta be mindful of it and then, think about how you build it.
Yeah.
And maintain it.
Well, here's here's another article. It's just from the Harvard Business Review. It says our data shows that great teams, right? And these are trainable skills. They also mentioned article as well. They communicate frequently, right? That's super important. They talk and listen in equal measure, equally among members, right? So it's not one person, like a super alpha, maybe toxic type that's always controlling the conversation and the narrative and swaying, to their, selfish needs sometimes. Engage in you mentioned this earlier, Neil. It's like those conversations outside of the meeting, right? Engaging in frequent formal communication is what they call here in the article. Another one is like, explore for ideas and information outside the group, right? So just going outside and they periodically connect with many different outside sources and bring what they learned and bring it back to the team. So we're always looking to grow outside of the team itself, just trying to strengthen in the team itself, but also strengthen the goal that you have as a team.
It's all about the trust fall. We've got to do more trust falls in organizations, right?
Yeah, actually, have you guys done an actual trust fall?
I have. Yeah. It's scary.
Yeah. You were like up on a plank, like 6 or 7 feet or something like that. Falling backwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You gotta trust your team in order to catch you. I've seen that done in different leadership offsites and things. And as silly as they are effective for at least developing trust in that very moment.
Yeah, well, they really show people where they're at. I've done it, and I maybe we should talk about this. Like, I tend to trust very easily. So I have a friend a long time ago. He said there's only like really 2 types of trust. He goes that either you give trust like right away, or you build into trust, right? And I'm kind of the guy that, I don't know if that's true. That's just his feeling, but I remember him saying that. And I tend to just give trust. Like, and I'm, maybe I'm ignorant in some ways, but like, why would they want to hurt me? And then when they do and they betray, and I'm like, all right, well, boom, they're out, or they have to, it's going to take a long time to reestablish that trust again. So when I'm doing this trust fall with people, I'll be like, in my mind, of course, I'm like, well, I hope they don't fucking drop me on my ass, because I'm going to get hurt, and I would just fall back and everything was fine. But, I was working, doing some work with Momentum Education a long time ago, back in like 2010, 11, which is similar to Landmark Forum. Just kind of developing myself as a stronger adult, a stronger individual, and getting skills that I haven't necessarily worked on or received from, my education in high school or college, or even like playing, collegiate sports. So it was a really great time to be able to explore these skills and work with them. But during this trust fall, I would see, we had, I don't know how we had like many members. I mean, I think we had like 40 people, and I guess we're broken into pods of maybe 15. And some people would be so scared. I mean, they're going to fall back, and they're like, no, I can't go. And, it was interesting to see their physical reaction and their emotional reaction, and the resistance to taking that trust fall. And it was interesting about the trust fall. You're not falling forward. You're literally falling back, right? So you can't even see where you're falling, which is can be a very, very scary thing for a lot of people.
I mean, that's why it's so effective, right? I mean, again, yeah. I said it jokingly, the trust fall earlier. I'm loving that we're talking about the trust fall for 5 minutes, but I mean, that's what you have to do in real life, right? You don't see that you're going to have that support in front of you, in your organization, in your team, with your friends, with your family. You don't see that you have that support. You just trust that you have that support. Yeah. And when you do fall, literally or metaphorically, when you fall, you need them there to catch you, to keep you from, again, literally or metaphorically hurting yourself. Yeah. So it is a pretty powerful thing. But you mentioned something there, Will, and we haven't spoken a whole lot. You talked about trust in your athletic teams, right? When you were a collegiate athlete, mm-hmm. and we've all been athletes of some sort back in the day, back in our prime, right? And I think that's where a lot of it starts, whether it's athletics or whether it's some academic team or something. When you're very young, you have a team that you start to develop trust in, and if that trust is supported, then you feel that you can give trust later on in your life. If you are betrayed very early on in your life, whether it's by an athletic team, an academic team, or even your family early on, it may be harder to give that trust. Like you mentioned, you're one that can give trust right away. Others may have to build up to giving trust, or have a lot of difficulty. Maybe it comes from something that they've struggled with early on. And I want to come full circle to, that's where maybe mindfulness can really come into play, is that you pay attention to yourself. You have trust in yourself, which I think is also a huge foundation in giving trust to others. And then you're able to really have that compassion, because you're being mindful. You have that compassion for others, and then you're able to give that trust more readily.
Yeah. Well, finding that, what we mentioned, Neil said earlier, is finding that middle path. That's what's really going to help you. Is so you're not like, it's essential really to find that middle. So if you're neutral, then potentially everything else in the world comes from a neutral place, right? Instead of being preconceived as a threat or preconceived as something else, right? I can be like, well, here I am, this situation's happening over here, or this relationship has just stepped into the room or something like that. It's like, okay, where do I, instead of putting some sort of like, label or judgment or previous circumstance on it, or even your emotional content at that time, and like putting someone as a target of your, of some sort of deep emotions that have nothing to do with them. It's like, how can I be neutral again? Sure. And I think that's really important for leadership and teamwork. There's no I in team. It's like, it's we go.
Right. Right.
Someone actually, Neil, I'd love to hear your comment on this. It's like someone wrote here, like, how do you deal with betrayal? Which is like the opposite of trust. Like I'm putting you on the spot here, Neil, but
yeah, how do you deal with betrayal? I mean, wow, that's a tough one when you really feel like your trust has been violated. I guess I can speak about,
or have an example maybe or something,
when there's been some times, in romantic relationships of past where I've felt betrayed, right? Where I felt not respected. And Yeah, I mean, you gotta kind of like do the work to get under the hood of why you both feel that way, and then figure out if there's a path forward to like rebuild trust. But I think it needs to be like very self-aware and mindful. The real risk is you just like brush it under the rug and don't address the betrayal, don't address like the feelings that were hurt, don't have some resolution to this thing. And if you don't, it will without fail affect that relationship going forward. So you got to like look at these things and bring them to the surface, and they're not going to go away on their own, right? You got to work through them.
Well, communicate, and I guess through honest, vulnerable, compassionate conversation, you begin to maybe form that trust again. I'm not just going to be slow to give somebody your full trust, or that person that you've had betrayal with. Like personally, I am not good at betrayal. Like I will admit that right now. I'm just like delete. I'm like, you know what? You fucked me over, gone. And I am that is not probably the best way to deal with those kind of circumstances. But like so that's it's kind of work in progress. So for me. But yeah, I just want to say that.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm probably the same way, but knowing that about myself, that's part of that equation, and I'm going to screw up that equation again. I'll have to bring it up in the captions, but that self-awareness, that self-orientation, that's critical, right? Knowing that you instantly cut somebody off if you've been betrayed, maybe that allows you to work on yourself and maybe take some leaps of faith and reach out to those who you feel betrayed by. I know sometimes what I've experienced is I've inadvertently betrayed someone's trust and haven't even known it, and they've cut me out completely. And then for one reason or another, months later, weeks later, years later, I don't know if you have your headphones in, but I'm getting a little bit of feedback. If you can just check your headphones.
Yeah, I don't have any earphone on. Yeah.
So anyway, if you can take that step. Anyway, sorry, I was saying about people who have taken that step. For me, they've reached up after they've perceived betrayal, and they've said, "Hey, Jon, when you did X, Y, or Z, it really hurt my feelings, or it hurt my level of trust." And I was like, "Holy shit! I didn't even realize that." And then that gave me an opportunity to apologize. So a lot of the time in working with betrayal, we just need to make sure that we have, first of all, in fact, been betrayed, and it wasn't an inadvertent betrayal or a perceived betrayal that wasn't ever even an actual betrayal. And I think that's important. So that comes back to not, brushing it under the rug, like Neil mentioned, having it out there, having that open communication, like you mentioned, Will. I think that's critical.
Yeah, so I mean, the vulnerability. I coming back to that, momentum education, and anybody out there listening, check them out. Like I think it's really helped me understand language, how I speak to myself, how do I speak to other people, how words really matter. Like what do they say, language is consciousness, and it also helped me be very effective with myself and therefore other people. And one of the exercises that we did during this training, and it was kind of like. I can't remember the name of the exercise where, and I did this leadership program with them. So I went from like this basic training, to an advanced training, to this leadership training, into like a master training with them over like a year's time. And when we were getting through the leadership training, we were working together in order to achieve different goals. And it was all group and goal oriented and team oriented in order to, and necessary in order to accomplish those goals. Stuff would break down. That's a big word, break down. There'd be a big breakdown. And we'd have like a conversation about that. And then it would be at like one of our final exercises as we're kind of closing this 90 days that we work together to achieve these goals as a group. We had this, I forget what it was called, but it was like kind of a betrayal, like, or opportunity when somebody has betrayed you within the group or within the team, you were able to speak up about it. And it was like, whoa, like really uncomfortable. But it was something about, coming back to what we said earlier about stress. It's like that stress of being in that uncomfortable place helped me just to get more familiar with being in that very uncomfortable, very vulnerable conversation with somebody, just like you said, Jon, and hearing and receiving information from them and really taking it in and not just brushing on the rug or deleting them or tell them like, oh, you're full of shit or something like that, or blaming them, it's your fault. And again, I think it's like putting yourself out there and being also, I think what's important to be a great leader, to be a great team member, is having the willingness, somebody mentioned here on the chat, the willingness to take that step and just to speak up, even if you don't have the right words, but coming from a heartfelt, kind space in order for hopefully something productive or at least real will come from that conversation. You can really see each other through or outside of the lens of that, the contentiousness that is between you.
Yeah, and I want to come back to Neil on something here, and it has to do with the organization that you're running with Evolutio. I know some of what you're doing is plant-based medicine, and I know some of the stuff that goes into the work before you do any type of plant-based medicine ceremony is maybe openness with the people that you're with in that ceremony, or maybe even during that ceremony. Can you talk to what you may have seen in those ceremonies, obviously not by name, but if you've seen anything like that, and how plant-based medicine can maybe even be used to get that trust back?
Oh, audio.
You're on mute, bud.
We're actually, I would say we're kind of targeting top teams, frankly, because look, this idea that we've been talking about, trust, is about authenticity, connectedness, empathy, and all these things can be trained, right? You can actually like work and get better at them through meditation, through mindful movement. There's real benefit to being in nature, digital detox, getting the thinking mind out of the way so that you can get into your heart and get into your central nervous system and then connect on that deeper level is really important. And so we've actually done programs with teams where we kind of bring them through. We teach them these tools, and then we use plant medicine together. And I think that this is frankly, I think this is the future. Now, I know I'm a bit out there on the fringe right now. That's fine.
Me too, Neil. Bring it.
Look, we bring groups together all the time, and we get drunk, and that's like okay. But there's not real benefit there. Alcohol in a lot of ways is making you tune out. So you're kind of like going the other direction, like away from this intimacy and like real heartfelt connection, where, psilocybin, like cultures have been using it for millennia, like literally all throughout the world. And it's natural and it's exceptionally safe. And when you use it in kind of ceremony and community, it really opens people up. It gets there's this like, we don't fully understand the mechanics of the science yet. We're starting to figure out some things, but there is this deeper level of interconnectedness that like plant medicine and meditation can help people get to. And it's really powerful. You get people to really get vulnerable and really connect. And then, that's how you get really high functioning teams.
Nice.
What dissolves a lot of, these psychedelics, they dissolve a lot of those things that get in the way of our true human experience. Right. And again, coming back to the hierarchy of needs, it's like our true human experience is to love, accept, to be, belong, to love, and to be part of something, and it's like I've been in those ceremonies as well. And just to see, some of the like before the ceremony, the hardest individuals, like the most toxic men or something like that, for lack of a better word, they just open up into a whole new place. And what I enjoy seeing as well, not just them open, but how they're opening changes the whole group. It changes the whole entire group. And you're like, now I am able to actually go deeper into my own heart and bring forth more of that love and that compassion and that vulnerability and authenticity. And it's just like, and then it just becomes this incredible rally around those things, which is, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it because I'm like, I'm serious. I'm re-experiencing in some way, because that's how deep it runs within our neurology and in our biology, 100%.
Well, and there's a reason why there's a reason why people have been using these medicines for thousands and thousands of years. They didn't need a clinical trial to tell them that they were some benefit to like connecting and, you know, having strong bonds and tight tribes and right. So we got a little bit smart in the Western world, and we needed to be able to prove everything on a chalkboard. You know, and instead of going through our own experience and saying, is this helpful to me? Can I feel this? It's like we need to have somebody else tell us that it's fact, right? But I think that, you know,
Right.
I have a business idea. Anybody out there listening, you know, give me a little credit out there. You know, we can have like, you know, our compassion coffee, little psilocybin in the coffee in the morning. You know what I mean? You know, drink it up, go to work. It's like, what's up, everybody? How are y'all doing? You know, it's like, so maybe that'll take, you know, as like you said, Neil, like as we step into the new future of humanity, maybe this is what it takes in order to shift that needle a little bit further over to like, you know, the place that we know that we can be as human beings.
Yeah, I think it can help.
I may or may not have had that coffee this morning already, Will.
Whoa, Jon. You got it. Awesome, Jon.
So, hey, all right, we're coming to the end of the show. Before we get into our final grounding practice for Neil and for our audience, Neil, what's the best way for people to connect with you if they have questions from you directly or about your organization and what it is you guys are doing?
Yeah, evolutio. So just like evolution without the n.org. And you can kind of see the team there, see what we're working on. We have retreats this fall in Jamaica and in Costa Rica that use psilocybin and like this holistic wellness programming that's, you know, been stamped by Harvard doctors. And it's this blend of kind of a really scientific approach, but we still incorporate the indigenous kind of tribal mysticism and ceremony, right? So it's a very safe environment and a really powerful experience, but there's real rigor to it too. Like there's science, you know? So I would love if anybody wanted to reach out and inquire about those programs. I can send them more information. And yeah, it's good stuff.
Right on. So evolutio.org. I'm going to put that caption up for people to see that, and we'll make sure that's in the show notes for people to reach out and find out more about that. All right. So, Will, you and me, who's doing the closing practice? You want to flip a coin?
You're doing this, Jon. It's you, my brother.
All right.
Because I love and trust you, Jon.
Oh, there you go, man. You put a lot of trust in me. You're putting your ego aside and you're putting your trust in me. Good for you. I think that's a key point, too, that we've got to put our egos aside. So that said, mine is going to look a lot like Neil's from this morning. I'm sitting here with my flip-flops on like I always do. I'm kicking them off so that I can put my feet on the ground and really get rooted into the ground. If you have shoes on and you're in a place where it's comfortable and safe to take your shoes off, go ahead and do that. And if you're in a place where it's safe and comfortable and you are comfortable doing so, go ahead and close your eyes. Otherwise, just soften your gaze and just kind of look at some spots somewhere about 6 to 8 feet in front of you. Sit up straight, but not stiff. And bring your attention to your breath. Not forcing anything, but just noticing the actual physical sensations of breathing. Noticing the air coming in, potentially through your nose. If it's coming in through your nose, notice the air passing your nostrils. Imagine that air going down into your lungs, inflating those lungs, expanding your belly. And the reverse as you breathe out. Notice your belly contracting, your lungs, imagine them shrinking, and the air coming up and out through your mouth. Notice that air passing your lips and your tongue as you breathe out. And now let's do 3 deep breaths with the hold at the top. It's not box breathing. It's just 3 deep breaths with the hold at the top. Begin by breathing all your air out. Breathe in deep through the nose, as deep as you can. Hold that. Feel that. And release. Blow it all out. Deep breath in. Really expand your belly and your lungs. Hold that. Feel that. And relax, letting it out nice and slow. Slow, slow, slow. Last one. Deep breath in, as deep as you can go. Hold it at the top. And let it go. Now just breathe naturally and bring your awareness back to the physical sensation of breathing. Specifically, notice the air passing your nostrils as you breathe in. And then shift from the sensation of the air passing your nostrils, shift to your eyes and slowly blink them open on your own time, or refocus your gaze. And here we are back together. All right. Thanks for an amazing show. Neil, thanks for being here, brother. Will, as always, really appreciate the show. And for our listeners and our audience, if you are watching or listening, take a screenshot of this and share it on social media. Help us to promote the show. More importantly, help us to promote the messages that we're putting out there: trust, compassion, mindfulness, meditation, love, loving kindness, those kind of things. And I'll turn it over to Neil for anything last before you go, brother.
No, well, thank you. I enjoyed it. Hopefully
All
we
right.
can do something like this again. Have a
For
great
sure.
weekend.
For sure,
Yeah,
brother.
for sure. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Jon, and thank you, the audience and everybody out there. And thanks for another great show. Appreciate it.
All
See you
right.
guys.
Take care, guys.
Peace.
Thanks for joining Will and Jon on Men Talking Mindfulness. If you enjoyed the show, please like and share it with your friends and family, and please, we would appreciate a review too. Until next time, this has been Men Talking Mindfulness. Thanks for showing up.